Hey everyone, welcome to another video of Willson Builds. If you're new here, I'm Zach. If you're returning from a previous video or my Instagram, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate all the support. It greatly motivates me to keep making these videos for you guys. And as we're just surpassing the 4,000 subscriber mark, I can't thank you guys enough. That is a huge accomplishment for me, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. So I really appreciate all the support. I truly mean that, and thank you very much. If you watched the last video, we got the 32 chassis all rolling and kind of functional with brake lines, everything kind of lower of the frame, basically done. Got all our tie rods in, brake lines are done, everything's in. So realistically, we could plop the body on here and call it a day essentially. But before we do that, I like to start putting the motor in and the radiator and headlights and grill and stuff like that, as I have a little bit of work left to do on the body before we can put it on. So what we're going to focus on today is putting the intake manifold on, gasketing down, torquing it, whatever, flex plate, torque converter, getting it in, putting the exhaust on, getting the exhaust on permanently, so gaskets, put the carb on permanently, and essentially just get the motor in here. And I would really like to get it plumbed. I don't know if we're going to get that far with coolant lines and transmission lines, but I would really like to, so we'll see how far that goes. But yeah, less talking, more working, and let's get into the video. All right, let's get these valve covers off because they'll just get in the way. And then we'll take, I might leave that on so we have something to kind of grab onto without being awkward. So we'll take our temporary bolts out of here. I'm actually going to move a few things. Now we can use our toolbox bench for our stuff. So take this guy off, and I don't know if I like that on there. Put that up there. I'm just gonna go around with my razor blade. I've already done it, but I'd like just to go over it just once more and get our surface really clean. All right, now that we have our surface all clean, we can go ahead and lay our Felpro gaskets. Yes, they give you, what are these? The front and the rear, as well as the distributor. The only thing you should be keeping in this little baggie, if I can get it open, is the distributor. You can go ahead and throw the front and rear seal away, because we'll be doing our own gasket with a little bit of ultra black. I've always used this, never had an issue. However, I have an issue in the past when I first did my first intake, and I used those, and I went to the ultra black to fix that. So we'll be using that to get going. That is a Permatex product. I swear by this stuff, it's really good. So I'm gonna do a quick bead along the front and the rear. I personally like doing a really thin layer around the water ports, because obviously it's not needed, but if it were ever to leak, you would wish you did do it. So we're gonna go ahead and do it anyways. Some people say not to, some people do it, some people are just like me and agree with both sides, but I'm gonna do it anyways. And usually Felpro gaskets have a stamp in them that says up. These ones are easy to remember because blue to the sky. So we're gonna just see how we're looking. Make sure we get a good kind of mark everywhere. I just like doing this just to be sure we can have full coverage of when we do our paste in here. So we know we have to go just a little bit up onto the curb there, and everything else is looking really good. Now we're going to take our ultra black. It comes with this actual really good nozzle you can use. You can cut to size. And that's probably going to do us right there. So I'm just going to do a really light layer around the water ports. And this will compensate for any pitting or anything like that. And like I said before, some people do this, some people don't. I've always done it because I'm worried if I don't, it'll be a Murphy's Law situation where it will leak. So obviously not a big deal, but I'm not even gonna say I recommend it because I don't, but I do it just so you guys at home know. And now we can start putting on our main little strips here. I like kind of going back and forth like a weld so we can get a good bead here. And as I go back and forth, I'm just doing light squeezes. Now we can put our gaskets on. The nice thing about doing our water port is it actually holds this nicely when we go to kind of dry install them. And again, if you missed what I said earlier, blue to the sky if it doesn't have any other indications on which way is up. As you can see, our little tiny bit of ultra black around the water holes is holding that in just perfectly. We're able to line it up, a little bit of pressure. There we go. Fantastic. And this little ends of our actual gasket, not our pasted gasket, are just sitting inside where we will overlap, kind of going up into the ridge. Ooh, all right, let's get this intake on now. So the most important thing about doing this is just making sure it goes on evenly. So I like grabbing it by the water neck and the distributor hole and just kind of going high side on one side and just making sure all our holes are lined up with our gasket. Perfect. I know there is a torque pattern, but we're just gonna get these tight-ish for now. We're not gonna quite torque them down, but get them to a point where they're snug. And I'll add the torque picture, or pattern I should say, in the video here in a few seconds. Gonna do. Obviously there's some areas I can't get with a torque wrench. So the one spot is this guy here. So we're just gonna snug it. It's only 30 pounds. We're not going overboard with it. Torque wrench out, set it to 30 foot-pounds. All right, so we got really good adhesion where we put our ultra black, and I'm really happy with it, but I'm gonna wait, I don't know, maybe an hour so it dries a little bit, and then I'm just gonna torque it around 5 pounds more, just a little bit more so we know it's really seated. I don't know if that's necessary, but it's a little tip my dad taught me when I was younger. So should be pretty good. And then put our carb plate on because it's gonna be a little bit dry. I don't know if you have to wait, but I just like waiting. It's just a peace of mind thing for me. And then get it down on the ground, flex plate, torque converter, transmission in the car. I'm gonna get a thermostat tomorrow, and then yeah, probably focus on exhaust mostly tomorrow, and then we'll worry about you know, plumbing our radiator and stuff like that, as that's gonna, you know, be a little bit more tricky. I love using the stainless steel AN lines. Not too sure what I'm gonna use with this. Maybe the stainless steel ones, maybe the black braided ones, but we'll get to that once we're ready to do that. But anyways, I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit, do some other things, and then we'll see you in about an hour, maybe even tomorrow. And we'll get this thing on the ground and start putting the transmission in. All right, now that it's all dry, we're gonna get our carb plate on and start, I guess, thinking about putting the transmission bolted up. So I have my torque converter, I have my flex plate ready, and essentially you just gotta make sure that engine hoist, I got a new engine hoist, goes all the way to the ground or to a spot where I can comfortably link them all together. Let's get this in a position where we can move our engine hoist and kind of see where we're gonna go with it. Okay, so now that we have the motor down, I put the flex plate on, and we're gonna have to put our bolts in, but I'm just gonna quickly do some Loctiting. Oh, that came out really fast. So I don't know how good this is, but I've done this, I don't know, for years. When I'm doing this, I just put a piece of wood block underneath here, and I'll stand on this, and then we'll take our torque wrench and just give it a little bit of a torque. I've already torqued these all down, but I figured I'd show you guys the trick here. Just using a block of wood. Not too sure how healthy that is for the teeth, but like I said, I've probably done it on 5 or 6 motors now. Never had an issue. So I think it's probably not that bad. But anyways, gets the job done. So this is in. Now we have to pull our transmission over and get that all settled in. All right, so now comes a bit more of a challenging step. We have to attach the torque converter and the flex plate. All right, so for simplicity's sake, I'd actually like to put our starter motor in before we continue. This is a Summit starter motor, and I really like the one that I have on the 55. This is the exact same one, so I bought another. I didn't need to shim it. I didn't need to do anything to it. It fit in great, and it sounds cool starting up, which is, you know, a plus. So, yeah, let's just plop it in there and see how it goes. Okay, so I've put our motor mounts kind of loosely in there, so we have something to drop the motor onto. I have to put, oh, the transmission mount is actually on there, so that's good. We left it on there. So it's time to put the motor in.
All right, now that we got it in, I'm just gonna measure from side to side. We are 9.5 there. Measure the same side here. 9.5, perfect. So we're centered. I have to do the transmission mount bolts up, and I'll tighten these guys, and then we'll take the hoist away and be good. So during building this car, I've had a lot of, that's a cool kind of look for it. And I think this is by far the coolest version of what we have so far. I mean, when it got pulled out of the barn for the first time down in Washington, it looked really cool. Had the raw body on it with a raw 32 frame with a flat head. It had a heavy axle, which is really cool. If you know what heavy axles are and how rare they are, you'll understand. And it sat there. I don't know how long it sat for, but it looked like many, many years. And the fact that we could bring it back to life is really cool. And this is just, I think, the coolest version since I've owned it, of where we're at, and it can only get better from here. So I'm gonna start tackling the front accessories and kind of move my way back. We'll do the front accessories, exhaust, and then kind of go from there. Maybe put the radiator on, headlights, grille, kind of work our way around the car. But I'd like to start at the accessories and then move into the exhaust. And I'm stoked. This is looking so cool. Okay, first things first, we're gonna put the thermostat on. I know it kind of goes off in about a 45, and I've heard you're supposed to align the top loop here with the flow. I don't know if that's entirely true and how much it actually matters, but for safety, let's just do it anyways. I personally really like these Remflex gaskets. They're a crush gasket, and they just seem to work. They're a little bit more pricey, but they sure do the job well, keeping exhaust leaks out. So make sure we got a good line up here. Perfect. Now that we got most of the bolts in there, we can work on getting our alternator on. All right, I'd like to get the carb on. And then our valve cover gaskets. All right, I'm actually gonna not do our valve cover gaskets right now, only because I think we're gonna polish these valve covers a little bit more and polish our air cleaner a little bit more. They're just a little dusty. They could be a lot better. So I'd like to make them a lot better before we finalize and put our valve cover gaskets in. Speaking about polishing, we're gonna go and I've already polished one side, but we're gonna go through and polish the other side of the exhaust. Firstly, I will show you the polished side and we'll install it, and then we'll get polishing the other side. So as you can see, the ones on the left here are polished. I mean, they're not perfectly polished, but they're more polished than these guys, which is the raw finish. The only part you're gonna see is about from there to about the middle of there, and maybe a little bit of the tailpipe. But that being said, I'm not too worried. We're gonna polish the whole thing. I might go over and just do this again, but we can also do that on the car, so I'm not overly worried. But I'm gonna install this side. All right, loosely in there. I did a quick file of the surface here and up here as well. So what I'm gonna do, take our ultra copper, and I'm just gonna coat this gasket. All right guys, we got the cap on and the exhaust. Give you a good look at it. It comes out right there. So I'm gonna leave that side to polish till tomorrow because it's getting really late, and we'll put that on, route it, and then little stuff, distributor. I'm gonna try and get a belt tomorrow, and then tomorrow we'll also put on the radiator. All right guys, so this morning I just put on the other pipe before we polish it just to check fitment issues. Had a little issue over here, but it's so far worked out. Moved it down a little bit, so we got really good clearance down here, as well as very good clearance down here as well. So we're ready to pop that guy off. Okay. Step one, let's get this exhaust off. All right, so we got our polishing compound, red for cutting, green for polishing. There's a couple more in between that are existent, but I normally just stick with these two. We got our wool pads. I like the smaller ones because you can get really in kind of like the depths of certain areas. So I'll get this on there. Grinder. And just work our way. I'm gonna really focus on this area to about here, and then I'll just kind of, you know, leisurely go over, but still get it really nice, of course. All right, now that it's all shined up, it's actually more shiny than the other side. Oh well. We can start putting our gasket on and get ready for our final assembly. Now I just gotta find the gasket. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the last thing we can film tonight, because I started late and I have to go early, is belts. Now, I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to use. I did a rough measurement with a string, and then you add, I think it's 4 inches past your string because you're doing it on the inside. So I added 4 inches, so hopefully these are the right size. So I have 55 5/8 and 54 5/8. So I am gonna try the smaller one first, of course, and we can see if we can squeeze that on. Oh yeah, I think that's gonna be okay. I'll go back a little bit more, come on, there it goes. All right, that was easy. Let's get that tight now. All right, guys, that's all I have time for this evening. We're gonna wrap up for the night and start again tomorrow morning. Hopefully be able to tackle Radiator and a couple other things tomorrow. So fingers crossed we can get it all done before this video gets too long. Anyways, we'll see you tomorrow. All right, guys, we're gonna focus on putting our radiator in today. Now, this is a new radiator that we picked up. This is from Gas Classics. I believe it's Performance World. Aluminum radiator. Our last one we used for mock-up. We were totally gonna use that, but I didn't know we could get the return on the right side instead of our old one that we used for mock-up had it on the left side. So it makes it way easier with our water pump being on the same side. And so instead of doing a big loop, we can just go straight into our return here. So really happy with that, but this one is I think a 1/4 inch thicker, so fingers crossed our electric fan still works. But I did make this so it could move just a smidge back and forth, so hopefully get that on. So I have our radiator mounts we built. They're all painted and ready to go, so let's get it on. All right, so I went ahead and put the headlights on just to get the kind of look of the front end. I still need to put the actual grill piece in, the grill insert into the grill shell. But I think today we have some extra time, so maybe I go tackle getting our coolant lines. Now there's a couple ways you can do this because you can get those, metal bend ones and you can cut them to size and they're pretty good. But to me, they look okay. I have nothing really poor to say about them, but I'd rather just a fitted black hose. And that's just the way I like to do things. But we gotta check the outer diameters for these guys so we can get a proper hose on there. So that is 1.5 for that guy and about the same for there. So that's 1.5. Now an issue we may face is down here. This is about, 1 3/4, where this guy is 1.5. So, there's a couple different options we can get. You can obviously get hoses that start at 1.5 and then go into 1 3/4, and that's not a huge deal. The deal is this is such a tight bend that we're gonna have to cut and manipulate a hose to fit down here. Okay guys, we just got back. We got pretty close to the shapes we need. The top one's really good. The bottom one, however, could be better, but realistically it's not ever gonna get better because we have such a weird kind of angle to work with anyways. So both of these will need to be cut. That's the only downfall. That being said, these are like $30 each. So we need to be really careful cutting these so we don't have to go buy another one. I've done that before and it's not fun. So what I'm gonna do is see, well, what side is actually the best here? Probably this way, I would think. So we can snake that guy on there, make sure it's nice and on there. And then we just have to, I might pull the grill off so we can sit it on top of the radiator. Much better. We gotta be really precise when we cut this. So maybe cut it a little bit longer and then work with that after. So it's looking like right about there. So I'm gonna get my, oh, I have a pen here. Make sure there's no kind of back and forth. I'm gonna go a little longer. That's actually pretty good. That fits on there actually really, really nicely, even though we went a little longer. There's a little bit of a kink here. That will be totally fine for flow. That's, you know, that's appropriate. Yeah. All right, so surprisingly, this worked pretty good. I mean, there's a small kink there, but I'm not really worried about that. There's still lots of flow in there. There's nothing weird like a weird bend, but that's gonna work pretty good. And then just put our clamps in the nice places, maybe trim it up a little bit better, but overall, these will work pretty good. Radiator is plumb besides our trans lines, which we'll do next. Okay, so we're running a transmission cooler here. I've used a lot of these. They're just like an inline, so it'll go from the radiator into the cooler, out of the cooler, back into the transmission, and then out of the transmission to the radiator. And all this does, it just creates a bypass and cools as it goes. I'm having a hard time mounting this because if we put it on the side here, we're running into a body mount. And I mean, it would probably work right there, to be honest. I might have to file down a tooth or two, but actually might work there. Into there, a 90 out, into there. Yeah, actually might work. All right, let's draw a bit of a diagram here so we know what we need. So we'll do our rad here. We'll do our cooler, and then we'll do our transmission. Okay, so essentially why we're doing this is so we know what fittings we need. So off the rad, we're going to do 245s, I think, because if we did a 90, it'll go right into our return main line. And then out of the cooler, we're going to need to do a straight and a 90. And then out of the trans, we're going to do 2 straights, I believe. So essentially, once we have it all flowing, it will look something like this. From the rad, it will go from the radiator to our cooler, from the cooler to our trans, and then trans will go back into the radiator. So essentially every time it cycles through the radiator, it's going through the cooler, into the transmission, and back to the radiator, and it's a constant kind of cycle of cooling. Okay. So we just got back from Gas Classics, and the only thing we didn't get, I got some little clippings of lines, but I'm gonna need a lot more line. But we got all our fittings, so we can start that process. Only problem is it's Thursday and we upload every Friday, so may or may not get this done today. If not, I can come back tomorrow morning and finish it off and still have time to upload. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all our fittings and I'm going to start putting them in all the holes that we need to be filling. And essentially we can take what we do have and start making lines, but yeah, shouldn't be that hard. Okay, so I got the last line in. You can see we went to 90 on that one, 45. It lined up pretty good. Now we can put our line organizers together. So basically just cinch these two up and make them clean. All right, now we have all the lines going. We have to focus on the cooler. And I also took some of those line organizers and drilled them out so we could fit a longer bolt through there. So we can actually mount those to the frame to organize the lines down the frame so they're not just flopping around. Obviously, you know, it might be okay for them to kind of hang out, but I just don't want them to. I want them to be nice and tidy on the frame. They're pretty tight, but I mean, I can go side to side, but up and down's okay. So all I want is it just to hold it in place. So I have my 90-degree drill. So I'm gonna, I think realistically we'll probably only need one organizer on the side here. Yeah, probably right about there. You probably can't see that too good, but we have an organizer there. That guy right up there, if I can focus on it, is actually drilled to the frame. So those aren't going anywhere. If I can get a better, there you go. So we just drilled it out, put that Allen key head in there, and then just tapped right into the frame. And then it comes up through here, another one right there, and goes in. So it's nice and tidy, barely see it, and it does what we need it to do. So now we have to worry about mounting this, which is just going to be drilling. I don't even know if we have to do the 4 holes, but at least 2 holes, tapping, and then fastening it. All right, we're almost done the video. I'm gonna just do one last safety tighten of all our fittings, and then we'll go over it and call it a day. Thanks for hanging in there, but still a little bit left to go. All right guys, if you're still with me here, thank you so much for staying this long. I know this video is probably gonna be a little bit longer from all the content we're filmed, and I have to edit this tonight so I can upload it because it is Friday today. So you'll probably see this video, I don't know, an hour or two after I finished here. So thank you for sticking with me here. We got a lot done. Everything is basically done to put the body on now, which is incredible. Everything is plumbed. We have our brakes, we have our exhaust, and it's all, you know, in for the last time, fingers crossed. It's all officially in and gonna stay in. Obviously, we still have to wire the gas lines. There is a couple little things for our gauges we have to plumb in as well, so not too worried about that, but everything that was meant to be done before we put the body on is done, and that's huge. Super excited. Really happy we got all the exhaust on, all plumbed. The grill shell's in, headlights are on, so you guys can get a really good feel for what the car is going to look like now. And we still have a little bit of work to do on the body before we can plop it on. So that might be in the next video. That might be it's going to be a video to come very soon. I don't know what we're going to upload next week though, because we're running out of little jobs to do before we put the body on. So maybe we do something just in the shop. Anyways, guys, thanks again for tuning in. If you saw something you like, dislike, something I can improve on, something specifically done to the Roadster you want to see, leave it in that comments below. And while you're there, don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe button, and also the notifications button, because that really helps us kind of in that algorithm. You guys can see when I'm uploading. So really thankful for all you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.